Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll call to order this meeting of the Planning and Development Council. And ladies and gentlemen, it's with a great deal of pleasure that I do it tonight because we will tonight be technically complete for the first time in months and months, as we will be swearing in, we'll be recognizing the election of Ward 2 Local Councillor Ray Chisholm to the balance of the 2014-2018 term of the Oakville Town Council. And it's my pleasure to introduce to everyone Mr. Chisholm, and I'm going to ask Mr. Chisholm if he would stand to be sworn in. And I now call upon the Honourable Mr. Justice Jamie K. Trimble to administer the declaration of office to the Ward 2 Councillor Chisholm.
Mr. Chisholm, ladies and gentlemen of Council, Your Worship, it's my pleasure to administer the declaration of office in accordance with Section 232 of the Municipal Act, 2001. Councillor Chisholm, having been elected to the office of Ward 2 Town Councillor in the town of Oakville, do you solemnly promise and declare that 1, you will truly, faithfully, and impartially exercise this office to the best of your knowledge and ability? 2, you have not received and will not receive payment or reward or promise thereof for the exercise of this office in a biased, corrupt, or in any other improper manner. 3, you will disclose any pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. 4, you will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And you make this solemn promise and declaration conscientiously, believing it to be true, and knowing that it is of the same force and effect as if it was given under oath. Councillor Chisholm, how do you say?
I affirm.
It's my pleasure to confirm, Mr. Mayor, that the Member of Council, Mr. Chisholm, has now taken the declaration of office, declared before me at the town of Oakville this 18th day of April 2016. Councillor Chisholm, good luck. Please accept my and the court's best wishes as you govern the town of Oakville over this term of office. Thank you very much, and with your permission, Your Worship, I'll withdraw.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Justice Trimble. Welcome to your place on council, Councillor Chisholm, and please don't let the applause mislead you into thinking that's the normal treatment that we get from the public. It's good of you to bring your friends. Now, council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, I see none. We now need to resolve into committee of the whole. Councillor Lapworth moves and Councillor Duddick seconds. And before I call the vote, I'll explain to the public that Committee of the Whole is a period in which we have looser rules that permit more participation from the public and greater questioning of staff than in the higher formality of a council meeting proper. We have 5 items on the agenda tonight, and each item that ever comes before council is, of course, very important to the business of the town, but if you fail to find these riveting and exciting, I won't hold it against you. So I'll now call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And we are resolved into committee of the whole. The first item before us is the subdivision agreement for Green Ginger Phase 1, and we have been provided with a report from the Development Engineering Department, and in the agenda tonight is a 3-part motion that staff are hoping will be moved. Commissioner, do you have a presentation for council and the public?
We had not planned for a presentation on this item, but if you'd like one, Darnell Langbright could summarize the report.
I think I'll move to asking council if they have questions. Are there questions, council, on this matter? Are there members of the public with information on this matter for council's consideration? Council, does anybody have a motion? Councillor Hutchins? All right, so the motion is before you that the subdivision agreement between the town and Green Ginger be approved and the solicitor authorized to make minor changes which do not affect the substance, that the agreement between Green Ginger and with Green Ginger and Clear Day be executed in accordance with bylaw 2013-57, and that staff be authorized to accept a conveyance of additional lands required to complete the roads and bring forward a road dedication bylaw for the lands outside the plan of subdivision without further report once they've been conveyed to the town. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Thank you, Councillor. That carries. Now, we have a confidential consent item, and I think I'm looking at the same thing. So, what I was going to say is, in the confidential consent item, you have advice from the legal staff with regard, or from, I'll just say from staff, from legal staff, respecting concerns about the Committee of Adjustment matter involving 546 Wingrove Drive. And if you are comfortable to move this in public, I would solicit a motion, one, that council confirm the appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board of Committee Adjustment decision respecting 546 Wingrove, attached as Appendix B to the report. What?
You should vote on it before that becomes public.
Oh,
A motion.
all right. So we need someone to move the contents of the legal report. Councillor Elgar?
Your Worship, I wouldn't mind moving this to the end of the meeting. I've got a question that would have to be asked in camera,
All right.
so if we could move to the end.
We'll move it down.
Thank you.
C2 has been withdrawn. Item number 2 is the public meeting report for zoning bylaw amendment, Golden Arctech Investment Corporation at 2418 Calsa Gate. And we have a presentation by Rob Thun. Council, I hasten to assure the public, have already read the report, but we entertain these presentations so that people following along at home or in the audience can know what the heck we're talking about. Mr. Thun, we're all ears.
Thank you, Mayor Burton and members of council. This is a statutory public meeting on a zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Golden Arctech Investments Corporation for the development of a 10-story mixed-use development, 274 residential units, 791 square meters of commercial at 2418 Calsa Gate. Just a typo on page 1 of the staff report. It should reflect 274, not 247, Your Worship. The report can be found on page 71 of tonight's agenda. And as always, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to obtain public input related to the application, and staff will return in the future with a recommendation report. The air photo identifies the application area and its context with the surrounding area. So briefly, from a surrounding standpoint, you have Bronte Road and residential to the west, in this area right here. Calsa Gate and residential to the east and the south. Development is occurring already in this area here, and also to the south. Development applications have been approved. And to the north is Pine Glen Road, the EMS station that is operational, and also additional residential that is on Calsa Gate, or on Old Bronte Road. From an official plan perspective, the site is located within Palermo Village. Section 4.1 of the Livable Oakville Plan identifies Palermo Village as one of the town's primary growth areas. The site itself is designated urban center, and with that, there's a minimum residential density of 100 units per site hectare and a maximum floor space index of 4 times the lot area. From a height perspective, lots on a corner within the Palermo Village can go to 10 stories. From the zoning bylaw perspective, 2014-014, the site is zoned ED, existing development. The applicant has submitted a site-specific application, zoning bylaw amendment, to reflect the proposed development and to introduce a zoning category of MU4 urban core to the site. A public information meeting was held on March 2nd. No members of the public were in attendance. The slide before council at the present time reflects the proposal as submitted with the application. It is 274 residential units and 791 square meters of commercial on the ground floor within this 10-story development. Access to the site will be from Pine Glen and also Calsa Gate. The proposal also includes surplus land along Calsa Gate, and the applicant is working with the town's Realty Services Department on the disposition of such lands. So, in conclusion, Your Worship and members of council, staff are putting forward this recommendation for council's consideration. And once again, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to obtain further public input. The application does remain in technical review, and we will return in the future with a recommendation report.
Thank you, Mr. Thun. Council, are there questions for Councillor Elgar?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Question to Mr. Thun regarding a sentence on page 81, just for clarification in case anybody's reading it, because at first it doesn't, in my opinion anyway, it didn't make sense. Anytime you narrow a street, you think it becomes less walkable. So it reads, as new development occurs in Palermo Village, there are opportunities to narrow Old Bronte Road and Calsa Gate to create a more walkable street. So, Mr. Thun, can you explain what you really mean here?
Sure. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Elgar. The Old Bronte Road Calsa Gate streetscape study provided the direction as to the width of Old Bronte Road and Calsa Gate. In this section, Calsa Gate is 47 meters wide. It is a rural nature, so there's roadside ditches and a road platform with no curbs. So the opportunity is to sell surplus lands, which has come before council previously, to introduce a street that would have street trees, sidewalks, lay-by parking, allowing the developments to get as close to the front property line as possible, and thereby creating, from an urban design perspective, streets that are more walkable, that are more urbane, that allow the residents of that neighborhood and the community itself to walk up and down Calsa Gate. So it is a narrowing of the road, but we're introducing elements to a road that doesn't exist today.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any others? Are there any members of the public with information for council on this matter? Councillor Elgar has moved the receipt. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is carried. So now, item number 3, the public meeting and recommendation report for Winston Park West Employment Lands, Infrastructure Ontario, Tumulka, Sheridan Lane Holdings. And for this, we give our attention to Heinz Heck, the Manager of Current Planning.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. This is a public meeting and recommendation report regarding a draft plan of subdivision and zoning amendment as it applies to approximately 37 hectares of land located at the northwest corner of Highway 403 and Upper Middle Road. The land ownership is currently in 3 land holdings. The Infrastructure Ontario owning the easterly portion of the property, Sheridan Lane Holdings owning the westerly portion, and Mr. Rick Tumulka the center portion. In terms of the proposal, the effect of the applications would be to create a plan of subdivision intended for employment uses. The internal road network consists of a new north-south road extending north from Upper Middle Road and then west to intersect with 9th Line. The Upper Middle Road access would be a right-in, right-out only, with the opportunity to develop into a full move access at some future point in time. The subdivision has been designed to provide a future road connection north through the 5 drive-in property as well at some future point in time. And also to allow road access further to the west, which is identified as Street C, to ensure opportunities for integration and coordination upon the redevelopment of the 9th Line properties. A stormwater management facility is located at the northeast corner of Street A and Upper Middle Road. And business commercial uses would occupy the northwest corner of Street A and Upper Middle Road, with the balance of the development for business employment uses. Generally speaking, the difference between business employment and business commercial would be business employment would cater to office development, light industrial uses, whereas business commercial would introduce some service commercial functions as well. The draft plan would also delineate the open space areas as well as the wood lot, which would be conveyed to the town as a condition of draft approval. In terms of the town's official plan, the Livable Oakville official plan provides indication on how lands within the town are intended to develop over time. The staff report, which is before council, indicates that the proposed layout of the draft plan and the zoning bylaw conform to the Livable Oakville official plan in terms of the land use and policies. In terms of the zoning, the lands are currently zoned a combination of E2, which is business employment, E4, business commercial, Parkway Belt, and natural area. A site-specific zoning bylaw is proposed as part of the application, and it's been drafted to coordinate with the configuration of the draft plan of subdivision. The bylaw would do a number of things: establish E2 and E4 zoning categories for specific blocks, zone the open space, woodlot, and wetland blocks, natural area, zone the stormwater management facility, and establish appropriate setbacks to prevent building on the pipeline and hydro corridors. The bylaw would also carry forward the existing special provision which applies to the Glen Burnie School, which is located at the northeast corner of Upper Middle and Ninth Line. That special provision would ensure that development in proximity to the school maintains predetermined setbacks from the school for restaurants, drive-through facilities, and motor vehicle uses. On that point, Your Worship, planning staff wish to make note of a minor revision to the text of the zoning bylaw, which appears in the agenda tonight as it relates to the Glen Burnie School matter. The revision to the bylaw would add drive-through facilities and motor vehicle uses as prohibited uses within proximity to the Glen Burnie School. The draft bylaw, which is before council tonight, only identified restaurants as one of the prohibited uses. In conclusion, Your Worship, staff recommendation is that staff are of the opinion that the draft plan of subdivision and zoning amendment applications conform to the land use and planning policies of the Livable Oakville official plan. Conditions of draft approval have been prepared, which are intended to guide the ultimate build-out of the development in a manner to the satisfaction of the town, including commenting agencies such as the Region and Conservation Halton. On the matter of public input, staff note that there has been minimal feedback received on the applications, with the exception of Glen Burnie School and Premier Operating Corporation, which is the Five Drive-In. Council is also in receipt of a letter dated April 14th from Premier Operating Corporation regarding concerns related to potential street lighting impacts on the operation of the theatre. In response to that letter, the memo from planning staff to council requests the inclusion of a new condition of draft approval, condition number 49, which would require the developer to investigate street lighting options for Street B with Oakville Hydro and the town with the intent of mitigating ambient lighting impacts on the Five Drive-In. Staff recommend approval of the draft plan of subdivision and zoning amendment application subject to the revisions identified in the staff memo dated April 18th. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Heck. Councillor Adams?
Thank you very much. First of all, I wanted to thank our staff for the work that they've put into this file over the last few years. I know it's been a long time coming, but I've seen a number of the iterations and I've seen the improvements from the beginning point where we started off. So I appreciate the ongoing work that you've been putting into this file. I just had a couple of questions that I wanted to raise, and part of it's to raise it for my council colleagues, and part of it's to make sure anybody who might be watching we'll hear the answers as well. I know there's a number of interested parties that own properties in the area, and there are others who live in the broader area who might be interested in what's happening to these lands. So the first is the timing of the entry point where Street A hits Upper Middle Road. Can you give some kind of expectation around when you might see signalization of that?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Adams. Yes, that access is under jurisdiction of the Region of Halton and also MTO, given its proximity to the 403 Upper Middle Road off-ramp. The intent is for the access, Street A and Upper Middle, to be a right-in, right-out as an interim measure until such time the ramp from 403 to Upper Middle is removed by MTO. Attached to the agenda, there's also information about the ministry's EA that has been completed, which gives further information about what the long-term plan is for road development in the area as far as MTO is concerned. So in terms of timing for the signalized intersection, a full moved intersection, that's difficult to determine at this point. We've been advised that there's no funding available for the MTO works, and until that happens, the plan just allows for that possibility down the road.
So as I understand it, seeing as how it's not in any provincial plan yet, it could be out 15 years or more.
Through you, Your Worship, yes, the ministry's EA is intended to reflect 2031, I think, is the date. So any time between now and 2031 is potentially the timeline.
So that's to say that we have a great plan, and someday it'll come to fruition. And that sort of gets to my second question, which is when might we see when would we see a time frame for the MTO work around the new interchange point and the new off-ramp that they're proposing? And the same thing applies to that, which is sometime in the future, as I understand.
I'm going to defer to one of my colleagues for that. Dan, are you okay with that?
Councillor Adams, the MTO will advise us when the funding's available for the QEW 403 project. They have not advised us as of this time when it's going to go forward. As soon as we know, we'll let you know.
Okay, so it's great we have a plan, and people should know that we have a plan, even though we don't know when it'll happen. The last bit I just wanted to touch on was, can you walk through for everybody the plans for the water and wastewater servicing for the broader area, this piece as well as some of the other pieces in the area?
Through Your Worship, yes, I'm assuming you're referring to the lands on 9th Line on that.
Yes, the lands on these lands in particular, as well as the other lands on 9th Line.
Okay. So the Region of Halton has constructed a trunk water main that extends from Dundas Street down 9th Line to approximately the northerly limit of this plan of subdivision. The intent for this development is to tie into that water main and have water service along the internal roads connecting to Upper Middle Road. That would be both sanitary service and water, with connections along Upper Middle to a regional system along Ford Drive. The properties on 9th Line are currently on septic and wells, and there is no servicing for those lands today. The region has advised us that the intent would be for sanitary and water to be provided to those 9th Line properties at such time they redevelop, which means that that cost would be a local cost to the local developer for that. So given the fragmented ownership of properties along 9th Line, it really lends itself to land consolidation, land assembly to deal with cost sharing on those matters. With respect to the land south of Upper Middle, south of the draft plan. Those lands are also unserviced right now. They too would have an opportunity to tie in to the services that are going to be provided here. So the timelines are a little sooner than what would be available for the Ninth Line properties on that. Again, that would be subject to a development application being reviewed by the town and conditions being dealt with at that time.
Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing whether there's any members of the public here tonight, and if not, I have a motion for you.
Councillor Knoll.
Your Worship, I originally wasn't going to declare a conflict on this item, but I operate a private corporation in the town of Oakville by the name of Film.ca Cinemas, and it's a competitor to Premier Operating Corporation, which is in fact mentioned this evening, and they've expressed a concern and interest in this project. So I'm going to sit this vote out and declare my pecuniary interest.
Thank you, Councillor. You can shove back if you like. Anyone else at the table? Are there any members of the public with information for council on this file?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. It's Hal Watson. I'm here on behalf of Glen Burnie School, or a registered delegation. And, excuse me, I'm losing my voice today. I just wanted to confirm that although we had registered as a delegation, Mr. Hecht has shown me this afternoon the revised zoning bylaw, and which includes those additional provisions that relate to the setbacks for Glen Burnie School, and so we no longer have any concerns or objections to the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much for attending tonight and sharing that information. Are there other members of the public with information for council on the matter? Seeing none, Councillor Adams, did you say you have a motion?
I'd like to move the staff recommendation. Thank you again to our staff for all the work that they've done on this file. So I'd like to move, as I said, the staff recommendation as revised in the memo to council.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Item number 4 on our agenda tonight is a public meeting and recommendation report, zoning bylaw amendment, Biddington Homes, Oakville, which is north of Lillican Street, south of Glen Ashton Drive. Unless I'm sorely mistaken, a Ward 5 item. And we have Lee Musson to outline for the public what we're about to deal with. Lee? Our senior planner, I should add.
Good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council. This evening, you'll find my staff report on page 129 of your agenda. This is a statutory public meeting and a recommendation report for a zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Biddington Homes, Oakville, Inc. These applications were received in September of 2015. We did already hold one statutory public meeting on this site, and that was held on January 18th, 2016. No residents spoke at that statutory meeting. However, council did raise some concerns with respect to access and traffic. The applicant has since revised their application to address those issues from council. The current proposal is to allow the site to be developed for 36-unit stacked townhouse development on a block of land generally in the vicinity of Trafalgar Road on the south side of Glen Ashton Drive, north of Lillican. In terms of a little bit of background, the subject lands were originally part of a Kilberry Holding draft plan of subdivision, which was approved, or draft approved, in 2011. However, during the process of that larger subdivision, there was a number of environmental and land use matters that would impact the development of this particular block of land. These matters related to the identification of a wetland feature located along the adjacent hydro corridor and the identification of one provincial tree species at risk. In addition, the northern property, or this block in question, was partially located within the Trafalgar Road corridor study area. As a result, the rezoning of this block of land was deferred until completion of the Trafalgar corridor study. This study was approved by council in 2014. Following the approval of the study, a site-specific designation was applied to the lands, and the lands were redesignated as Main Street 2. This would allow these lands to be developed for residential uses only, with a minimum of 2 stories or 4-story buildings. The intent of the current proposal is to rezone the lands to permit the development of 2 residential buildings, 4 stories in height, in a manner that would recognize the wetland feature and the associated buffer, as well as retain the provincial tree species at risk. The subject property is irregular in shape and is approximately 0.45 hectares in size, with approximately 35 meters of frontage on Glen Ashton Drive. The application originally was submitted with an access to Glen Ashton Drive only. Given the proximity of this site to Trafalgar Road intersection and an existing median along Glen Ashton Drive, access was proposed to be a right-in, right-out only. An issue was raised by council with respect to the feasibility of a right-in, right-out access in this location. In order to address this issue, the applicant revised their plan, and the access is no longer from Glen Ashton Drive and is now proposed from Lillican Street. The site is still proposed to be developed as 2 blocks. However, a result of the redesign of the access on the site, the design of the property has also changed. This, you'll notice on the slide in front of you that the 2 blocks have now changed in orientation. The revised proposal is an improvement from an urban design perspective, and some of the units will now actually have orientation to the street, opposed to the original proposal where they would have oriented towards the rear of a commercial or future commercial block. Also, the change to the overall layout has resulted in an increase in number of units from 32 units to 36 units. The applicant is complying with the parking requirement. They are providing 54 parking spaces. 9 visitors are at grade. 9 residential parking spaces also at grade, with 36 spaces proposed below grade. Through the review of the original subdivision, as I mentioned earlier, the wetland feature was identified on the hydro corridor with a small portion of the wetland on the subject lands. The limits of the wetland feature was staked by the town and Conservation Halton in 2014. In accordance with Conservation Halton regulatory requirements, a 15-meter buffer is proposed around the limits of the wetland. The proposed development respects this wetland buffer. A provincial tree species at risk was also identified on the site. The location of the proposed buildings will respect the location of this tree. A regulation has been included within the bylaw in front of you this evening that would require a 38-meter setback from Lillican Street. In terms of the livable Oakville plan, as I mentioned earlier, the site is designated as Main Street 2, as identified on Schedule I, Central Land Use. The livable Oakville plan has site-specific policies for this site, which permits residential buildings with a minimum of 2 stories and a maximum of 4 stories. The application conforms to the official plan. The site is currently zoned ED, existing development. The applicant is requesting a site-specific residential medium density 3 zone for the land to implement the land use and establish appropriate regulations for the lands. The wetland feature has been zoned N, or natural area, and the lands to the south of the wetland feature has been zoned O2, private open space. Just to highlight some of the other regulations within the proposed bylaw, the maximum building height is proposed at 4 stories, which is consistent with the official plan. We're permitting a maximum front yard setback along Glen Ashton of 3.5 meters to provide a street-friendly face to the road. We're establishing a rear yard setback of 38 meters in order to respect the tree species at risk, and we're establishing the N, or natural zone. The first statutory public meeting, which took place in January of this year, where no members of the public were in attendance. Staff have not received any written correspondence from any of the neighbors in the area. Council did raise some concerns about access and traffic to this site. The access location was redesigned, as discussed earlier. At the request of council, the applicant prepared a traffic brief to review the potential cut-through traffic created by this development. The traffic report concluded that traffic generated by the subdevelopment was negligible and could be accommodated on the road network. The Region of Halton and town staff also concur with the findings of that report. The wetland feature and the tree species at risk, the wetland feature will be zoned natural, and through the site plan process, fencing, landscaping, and grading will also be reviewed by the town and Conservation Halton. The tree species at risk, the town and the applicant have been in contact with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. The ministry has advised staff that the tree species is fairly commonly planted in the area, and they have not been applying the full protection under the Endangered Species Act. The M&R did review the report prepared by the applicant, which made reference to tree protection, and they raised no concerns with respect to the tree protection as long as it's implemented. Through the site plan process, town staff will be working with conservation and M&R to ensure that the fencing and tree protection is in place. The staff report recommends approval of this site-specific zoning bylaw, which would have the effect of permitting 36 stacked townhouse units on the site. The height, design, massing of the proposal is appropriate and compatible with the adjacent land uses and in keeping with the intent of the land use policies of the Livable Oakville Plan. It is staff's opinion that the revised development provides for safer access to the site, better urban design, while protecting the wetland feature and the tree species. In conclusion, staff put forward the following recommendation for your consideration, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Musson. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. I just have a quick question, and then at the conclusion of the public delegations, if there are any, I have a motion and a comment. So my one question is with respect to the elevations on Glen Ashton, and I note that on page 132 or page 4 of the report, is that an active entrance or is that simply a back door? What sort of activity is that going to generate on Glen Ashton?
Through your worship to the councillor, that is an active elevation. So that would be the front door to those units. They are stacked back-to-back townhouses, so that would be the front for those particular units.
That's great, thank you. Your Worship, I have a motion, as I said, when you're
Thank you. We have, I expect at least one delegation. Councillor Lischina.
Thank you. Could you let us know when the construction happens, is it going to be going through Lillican, or can the company be doing the work from Glen Ashton? Just thinking about the neighborhood, is it going to be going through Lillican?
I believe there is construction activity already on Lillican to deal with the Dumpar development to the east. I would probably defer to Mr. Lambert to determine where the construction route would be, but that is something that the town does determine for the developer.
Through your worship, fully respecting that it's an active neighborhood in this area, I would like to see the access coming off of Glen Ashton for the work. Right now, Dunpar's building activity is coming off of Trafalgar Road to minimize the amount of traffic going up and down Lillican. So the same would be imposed on this development.
Councillor Elgar.
Thank you very much, Hugh Mayor Burton. It's regarding the wetland, and I'm just trying to figure, is town comfortable that, in fact, the wetland will remain when the pipes go in and you have gravel around the pipes and there won't be a new route for the wet water to go to a different place other than the wetland? I note in the report that Conservation Halt and M&R and planning staff haven't resolved these issues.
Through your worship to the councillor, I've been working quite closely with Conservation Halton and M&R. They have not raised any issues with respect to the development. The one thing that they did want, and which the applicant did do, was they moved the driveway a little bit further to the east, away from the wetland buffer edge. Through the site plan process, we will be working and looking at how that grading takes place, but that hasn't been raised as an issue. Through the site plan process, we will be asking the developer to convey the wetland features of the town, and in discussions with them, they have no objection to that as well.
Okay, because in the report it states that, which has not been fully resolved to the satisfaction of Conservation Halt, M&R, and planning staff, page 145. So maybe it's just, maybe that's just the information from 2012, and I just wonder what they did to resolve it.
Through your worship, I believe that reference was during the processing of the Kilberry subdivision in 2012. The applicant at that time wanted to actually rezone this piece of land for commercial uses. During that processing of that subdivision, we weren't sure exactly where the wetland was. We weren't too sure about what the status of the tree was going to be. We weren't even sure what the Trafalgar Road corridor study was going to show as the appropriate land use for the development. So at that time, it was premature to deal with that block until we had the discussions with Conservation Halt and M&R about those issues, and also that the study had been completed. Since then, we've had those discussions, and we are satisfied that the wetland feature and the tree at risk will be preserved.
Okay, that'd be interesting to follow in about 10 years. Thank you.
Well, Councillor, you'll have another kick at this cat at site plan, apparently. So, Madam Clerk, we have a registered delegation on this matter. Would you like to call forward the delegate?
Yes, Edward Nebeda.
Mr. Nebeda, are you present? Mr. Nebeda. Anyone in the public with information for council on this matter? Anyone at all? That's the second ask. Third time, gone. Councillor Knoll.
Actually, the previous question did elicit a follow-up question. In terms of construction access, I am concerned about access off of Glen Ashton. It is a road with a boulevard. It's very busy during the peak periods of the day, and I'm concerned about the impact of construction traffic on that road, slowing things down, creating a disturbance for the community, particularly, once again, a very, very busy road. Why are we not contemplating access off of Lillican?
Through your worship, we tend to be respective of the active neighborhood that's there and the amount of truck traffic that would come up and down. We can certainly explore how to balance that traffic between those two uses of roads. We were certainly conscious of that issue when we provided Dunbar access off of Trafalgar Road and made sure that they didn't go in and out of the site during the peak hours of movement. The same could be imposed on Glen Ashton.
Except that they did go in and out of the site during peak hours. So I am concerned about that. I've been stopped by Dunbar's trucks a couple times myself during peak periods of the morning where they're backing in or backing out, and it causes some headaches. So I'm satisfied with the staff doing the balance. And with that, Your Worship, I'll make the motion to approve the staff recommendation and just provide the following comment that both Councillor Grant, who was unfortunately not able to be with us this evening, and I were very concerned about access off of Glen Ashton, as well as the actual presentation on Glen Ashton. And the developer's gone back and they've provided, I think, a very good compromise, both with respect to the access as well as the street orientation of the building. So I'm very satisfied with the revised application and support it.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. I hope Council enjoyed hearing planning staff compliment you on your contribution to this file. So apparently it's been a success for everyone, this particular collaboration on development. All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? And that is carried. So number five. This is a recommendation report for a zoning bylaw amendment at 177 and 185 Cross Avenue, or 580 Argus Road. And we get to turn to our senior planner, Trish Collingwood, who will catch the public up to us on this file. And as I understand, is it my understanding correct that there's a holding provision for this as well?
Yes,
Great.
there is.
Over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. My staff report can be found on page 149 of tonight's agenda. The purpose of this report is to provide council with a recommendation on the zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by the numbered company listed above to permit a mixed-use development. The proponent submitted a zoning bylaw amendment application in 2012 to amend the zoning of the properties at 177 and 185 Cross Avenue and 580 Argus Road to permit a high-density mixed-use development. The subject lands are located just north of the GO station at the northwest corner of Cross Avenue and Argus Road. The property is within Midtown Oakville and is impacted by the Midtown Oakville Transportation and Stormwater Municipal Class Environmental Assessment. There have been a number of changes to the application since the proposal first came in. However, all three submissions have included a mixed-use development consisting of residential units and retail commercial and office space with underground parking and minimal surface parking. The current submission before you tonight includes 552 residential units and just over 3,000 square meters of retail commercial office space within 3 towers placed on a 2-story podium. The heights of the mixed-use towers B and C, which are the ones shown along Cross Avenue, are both 12 stories, including a 2-story podium, which would connect the towers, and that will house the retail, commercial, and office space proposed. The tower to the rear will be 20 stories and stand alone. There's a combination of surface and underground parking proposed on the lands, with a parking ratio consistent with the Midtown parking strategy. A site-specific Midtown transitional commercial zoning bylaw is included on tonight's agenda. It is intended to reflect the overall design elements of the proposal. The impacts of the Midtown EA and the local roads have been discussed with the applicant. The proposal protects for the future Cross Avenue extension as well as the future local roads, and bylaw 2016-38, which is before you tonight, has been drafted to ensure that no buildings or structures will be located within the future right-of-way. The lands are currently designated urban center and urban core within the Lions District area of Midtown Oakville. The Lions District is anticipated to develop into a compact mixed-use neighborhood with taller residential buildings and at-grade retail uses oriented towards Cross Avenue. Whoops, I'm going too fast. The application was reviewed to ensure that it conforms to livable Oakville objectives and policies, such as the Midtown growth area. The proposal is in keeping with the intent of the growth targets and policies within Midtown, as it would result in a development which would accommodate a minimum target for this area of 200 residents and employees per hectare. The proposal includes 3 mixed-use towers with over 3,000 square meters of commercial space, which meets the intent of the Lions District redevelopment policies. 2 12-story towers along Cross Avenue, as I mentioned, are within the urban center designation, and 1 20-story tower to the rear of the property is within the urban core designation, which is consistent with livable Oakville height policies. Schedule L3 shows the proposed road network for Midtown. 2 proposed local roads are shown on the subject property, one being a north-south and the other an east-west road, and these roads were confirmed through a local roads Midtown study. Oops. The recommended Cross Avenue realignment, as well as the north-south and east-west local roads that impact the property, have been protected for, as I mentioned earlier, through the proposed site-specific zoning bylaw on tonight's agenda. And you can show the gray area, or you can see the gray area here that I've shown is where the anticipated right-of-way will be coming off of the property. The Livable Oakville plan policies that speak to the need for transportation facilities to be improved in Midtown to achieve future redevelopment objectives recognize that development will occur gradually over the long term, and that it will be coordinated with the provision of infrastructure, including road network capacity and water and wastewater services. The proposal is in keeping with the future transportation network for Midtown Oakville, and to address capacity concerns with infrastructure in Midtown, a holding provision has been placed on the bylaw before you. The Midtown EA received final approval from the ministry in June of 2015. The EA identified a long-term strategy to guide development of the transportation and municipal stormwater network. The completion of the transportation network projects is expected to take 20 years or more. A phasing plan is being developed to look at the priority and timing of the particular road improvements that would permit development to proceed in line with infrastructure works and will be undertaken in conjunction with the region's area servicing plan. As well, I mentioned the holding provision has been placed on the site-specific bylaw that recognizes the infrastructure capacity concerns in Midtown and requires further analysis of the road network before a site plan on the property could be approved.
Trish, could you, for the benefit of the public, who I think have great interest in this matter and may not be fully conversant with the ins and outs of this phrase, holding bylaw, could you give us the grade school version of what that is? Spell it out in small terms for us.
I can skip ahead and do that. There we go. On zoning bylaw 2016-38, we have placed a holding provision on the bylaw. The holding provision will sort of lock the zoning into a holding pattern, basically, that will not allow development to occur on the site until a few things are sort of satisfied. We are looking at the road network capacity, the water and wastewater capacity, as well as there needs to be a record of site condition that's approved by the MOE. These things need to be further studied and satisfied. The town, the region, and the MTO, Ministry of Transportation, need to be satisfied that the capacity on the road network and water and wastewater are in place before development can proceed. So the holding provision allows for the zoning to come forward and be put in place, but held in place until such time as further work can be done.
So it bars the applicant from drawing a building permit.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks very much.
I'll just go back quickly and speak to the bylaw that is before you tonight. It amends the 2014 zoning bylaw that's in place now. Any new development applications that come forward in Midtown have to go through a rezoning application, and this allows us to look at the livable Oakville plan policies, as well as the review and the coordination of development with the phasing of road network improvements and servicing, as I said. The zoning bylaw in place has a number of site-specific regulations that will look, including the holding provision, that will look at height, parking, and separation distances between the proposed towers. It establishes front, side, rear, and flankage setbacks to ensure that no buildings and structures are located within the future right-of-ways. It also ensures the future. It ensures the future redevelopment of 582. Argus Road, which is the auto garage that is right here, and I know that the owner is in the audience tonight. It ensures that we're not precluding the development of that site. And it establishes a minimum unit count to ensure the Midtown growth area intensification targets are met. In conclusion, the proposed development is in keeping with the livable Oakville plan. The site has been configured and zoned in a manner which protects for the future Cross Avenue Road extension as identified in the Midtown Class EA, as well as the local roads that I mentioned earlier. Staff note that we have not received any concerns or objections from members of the public with the recommendation of the staff report tonight. Staff is satisfied that the application conforms to the overall policy direction of Livable Oakville and other relevant policy documents, and recommends the approval of the zoning as well as, the approval of the application, and that the bylaw 2016-38 be passed. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Collingwood. Councillor Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. So in the provincial growth plan and the Midtown area, this is what we had envisioned would come about in time when it was first laid out?
We envisioned a higher density mixed use development on sites such as these, especially right across from the GO station. So this fits in really well with the policies that we have.
So similar to the discussion or the question from Councillor Adams up along 9th line, this is the MTO doesn't have funding until some point in the future. I take it we're in the same boat in terms of the infrastructure, how it's going to be paid for, who's going to pay for it, and when it's going to occur.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you are correct, and I'm also going to let my colleague Dan Cozy speak to a bit of that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the town has included in its development charges for many of the Midtown projects. I believe it's approximately $130 million, roughly, in the development charge. So we are collecting. It's just a matter of moving forward with those projects and programming the Midtown projects into our capital forecast.
Thank you. The report mentions the construction work, part 2, for Trafalgar Road that's starting up shortly. And we won't be able to do a traffic study to assess the change affected by the closing of Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital until that construction is done at the end of this construction season. Is that accurate?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the anticipated construction, MTO's anticipated construction deadline was spring to summer of 2017 for the Trafalgar Bridge works. We would like a clean slate before we start looking at the impacts of the closure of the hospital to the Midtown network.
Just to clarify, the MTO's project will be done this year, not 2017.
Oh, sorry.
So the applicant would move forward with their additional traffic impact study work in 2017, once traffic's returned to normal.
All right, Commissioner. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to add to the earlier question about the funding for the Midtown area. The funding for the Midtown area is a significant issue that council still needs to deal with. We have, as Dan has said, sufficiently accommodated for it in our development charges bylaw, so we are collecting funds for it. But many of those projects are MTO projects. Some of them are regional projects. And the challenge is always ensuring that enough infrastructure is built when the development occurs, because of course we don't collect our funds through the development charges until a building permit is in front of us. So trying to get ahead of that to accommodate the transportation network before the development happens is the challenge. So although we have the financial mechanisms in place to begin to do it, I just didn't want to make light of that issue. It is a significant issue that does need partnerships from others. The reason why the holding zone is on this site is it allows us to look at some of those issues in order to move forward on those before development occurs.
Thanks, much appreciated. We're looking at 200 residents and jobs per hectare upon completion. Obviously, we're going to have a lot more projects coming through in the years to come. The current 2012 and 12 building height, were there bonusing discussions on that, or how do we balance future projects that will be coming in other areas of Midtown?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. When the first applications came in, there was a height limit that exceeded the official plan height limits. And bonusing discussions did begin. Soon a third submission came in that respected the height limits. We realized we were up against some obstacles there with the road network, and the proponent decided to lower the height limits to respect the Livable Oakville policies, and a holding provision is always an option for the zoning bylaw in order to move forward with that. So I think we would treat any other site the same.
Subject to future revision for the removal of the H.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any others? Councillor Elgar and then Councillor Lischina.
A quick question. Where is the nursery in relation to this property you're talking about?
The nursery?
The existing children's nursery? The daycare?
The daycare is in the, I believe it is in, sorry, the northern building that is staying. I can ask the applicant to speak to that if I've got it wrong, but there is one building that will remain on site longer than the expected construction of the 3 towers because of the, actually, let me show you. So I'm speaking to it. Here we go. In this building is where the daycare resides, as I understand. This is the road, this is the right-of-way that the applicant has set aside for the east-west road, local road. That building can remain until such time as the road network is being put into place.
Show me how that road's going to go? Again?
We have the north-south local road will come up this way and head straight to the service road, and this east-west road will come through here and connect to Argus. Now,
But it looks like it's going through the nursery, is it, or daycare?
It will.
That's the plan, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I am having trouble.
Just a quick question. Is Argus Road also going to be widened, or is it part of this holding provision?
Argus Road is not, it does not impact the site.
Okay.
So plans for, any plans for that roadway have not been determined to impact the site in any way.
And what you just described for Councillor Algard, there will be no access from the other street on the other side that just went to North Service. Is that correct?
From the site, sorry? No, the only access coming in off of this site is off of Argus Road right here. As proposed.
The amount of people living there, is that going to cause any traffic chaos?
We did not, in the review of the transportation impact study, we did not, there were no concerns raised with just having a single access off of Argus Road.
I go back and forth in that area, and it's busy now without the 3 tall buildings.
Councillor Hutchins?
Yes, thank you. The engineers, I believe, originally looking at this whole infrastructure matrix that's going to happen, recommended that there be 2 additional lanes across the 16-mile creek. And are we going to be able to look at that when we determine the capacity differences potentially between the hospital not being there as well? I mean, will we be looking at that as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll let Dan Cozy answer this question.
The 2 lanes, through you, Mr. Mayor, the 2 lanes that Councillor Hutchins is referring to was a recommendation arising from the Transportation Master Plan, switching gears prior to the Midtown study. And yes, it did recommend an additional 2 lanes capacity in the east-west direction along the QEW. Again, we have to work with the MTO to see when they would in fact deliver that project, because that would be something that they would fund. The piers at the bridge crossing of the QEW at 60 Mile Creek have been sized and built to allow for that additional capacity. But it's part of the solution with all the projects, as as Commissioner Closey mentioned earlier. We have to work with our partners at the MTO, the Region of Halton, and even Metrolinx to deliver these improvements in the Midtown.
Thank you.
You got a definite maybe there. I know. Anyone else? Are there any members of the public with information for council on this matter? Yes, sir. Come forward, please. Introduce yourself for the clerk and share your information.
Yeah, my name is Roshan Dankutur. I'm the person who owns that building in the auto repair shop.
Right there.
It's a road, it's a 2-way street, the road. It's right beside me, which is a huge building. It's called Rubbermaid Building, and there's a Holiday Inn, and then exits coming from Trafalgar, north, from south exit come Trafalgar to Argus Road. So I don't know how this trucks is going to be coming in, and it's going to affect my business. I don't know where they're going to put all the dump trucks and moving, and how going to affect my building. It's a very narrow road. Every day, which is a peak hours, it's a morning, and which is a late, which is afternoon, evening. You can see traffic. It's horrible. It's to go to across Avenue. I guess it's my concern is how you guys gonna find this, give a good solution for this to this proposal to make sure it's not gonna affect my business. I'm gonna be there for too long, so I don't know when they're gonna start, how long gonna finishing up this project, but.
So, Commissioner?
The traffic analysis that was done, I can reiterate what Mrs. Carlton had said, or Collingwood had said, that the traffic implications have been looked at. It does assume that you can accommodate the 500 odd units into that development while still maintaining traffic flow to get in and out of your business to the north. So that was the analysis that was done, and it was reviewed by transportation staff at the town, and those are the conclusions we had come to. The province has identified this area as a primary provincial urban growth center in order to accommodate growth. So there is an assumption that there will be some transition over time in the area. But even in the interim period, we need to ensure that the existing businesses and residents in the area can still be accommodated on that transportation network, and that's what we've defined through those studies.
Sir, were you possibly asking about the impact during construction, or were you talking longer range?
Yes, during construction.
So,
And, so how does,
Commissioner, perhaps one of your staff can speak to managing the disruption during construction for the, not just his business, but the others in the area.
this August Road, I'm worried about the August Road, I'm not worried about Cross Avenue. Cross Avenue is a two-way streets, I mean a four-way. This is a two-way in August Road. It's a very narrow road. I know seeing the construction, this dump trucks comes in back and forth, we'll have a lot of traffic going on this small tiny road. And that's my suggestion is also future, I'm planning to apply for proposal to my land for high-rise building, whatever, I don't know what's the risk, the risk. You had maybe another couple of years, or two, I'm gonna apply. I wanna make sure I have my rights too, for the height of the building. I guess I can find out the council, city.
Well, you certainly, you and your advisors are certainly welcome to look at all of the policies and regulations that council has put in place, and staff are there to assist you in that regard. Earlier in the presentation, Mrs. Collingwood pointed out that, in staff's opinion, all of your redevelopment rights have been protected for in terms of the way they set this out. Doesn't take a lot of imagination to see another tower. You know, there's 3 there now, and you could picture a 4th pretty easily there. So I don't know what else to tell you now. The staff have given us to understand that there'll be rules in place to try to keep construction from negatively impacting you in the near term, and certainly your rights for redevelopment are as good as these guys.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for bringing your information. Anyone else? I'll look for a motion. Councillor Hutchins? You're going to move the staff recommendation? Thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Now that brings us to item number 6, the Livable Oakville Official Plan Review Council Subcommittee Report from March 21st, and we're asking that you receive the minutes that you've received. Councillor Dudek so moves. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? The minutes are received. Now, before we rise and report to council, Councillor Elgar wanted to go in camera on item C1 or to ask a question. Let me ask if you, is it a question that can be asked in public? I don't, there's. No, it's on blue paper. So your question's not on blue paper. Well, then give us a motion.
Based on information based on our lawyer litigation, legal litigation, on camera.
Councillor Elgar moves that council go into a session closed to the public for the purpose of receiving communication from council subject to client privilege and possibly concerning litigation that the town may be involved in. All in favor? Opposed, if any? And that carried. This is the last item on the council agenda, and we will, when we come out, we will probably pass the bylaws and adjourn so that the public won't be missing much. All right, council is now resuming its public session, having been in a session closed to the public for the purpose of receiving advice subject to solicitor-client privilege about litigation that the town may be involved in. And I now look for a motion to approve the staff recommendation in the confidential report. Councillor Dudek moves it. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. I now can make public what we voted on. Number 1, that council confirm the appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board of Committee of Adjustment Decision A42-2016 respecting 546 Windgrove Crescent, and that the town solicitor further the appeal to the OMB or its resolution in accordance with the report dated March 31st, and that council waive the town application fees for a further application to the Committee of Adjustment should the owners or applicants put forth a revised design satisfactory to planning staff, mayor, and the ward councillor, or in the alternative, should the owner applicant indicate that they will consent to the town appeal, the dismissal of the existing application, and the building of the new dwelling completely in compliance with the town's existing zoning bylaws without any variances, then the town's application fees for the existing application be rebated to the owner. And so there we, pardon? We already voted on it.
Oh, maybe we should, now that you've read it out, maybe we should have another vote on it to record it. I would like that.
Well, you can have that on request at any time, even after we've had a vote. All those in,
Still in the same meeting.
all those in favor, please rise to be named. Apparently, Councillor Elgar, you like this one a lot. Councillor Lischina, Councillor Adams, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Lapworth, Councillor Elgar, Mayor Burton, Councillor Hutchins, Councillor Giddings, Councillor Chisholm, Councillor Dudek, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor O'Meara. I declare the measure passed again, and thank you one and all. Now, the next thing we need is a motion to rise and report. Councillor Chisholm, your maiden motion. All in favor of Councillor Chisholm's maiden motion? Any opposed? You've won a unanimous victory. Thank you very much. That is carried. I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent item 1, confidential consent item C1, C2 having been withdrawn, and public hearing items 2, 3, and 4, discussion item 5, and advisory committee minutes item 6, as noted by the clerk. A mover and seconder for the report would be in order. Councillor Lischina, Councillor Lapworth. We're doing the L's tonight. All in favor? Opposed, if any? The report is adopted. Now we turn to new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature. I guess we've already congratulated Councillor Chisholm on his joining us. Councillor Hutchins, do you have something?
No, I was merely maybe it should be condolences rather than.
Oh, no. Let's not have any winter remorse here. It's a noble calling that Mr. Chisholm has joined here. I'll ask for a mover and seconder for consideration of reading of the bylaws then. Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Robinson. All in favor? Opposed, if any? And the bylaws are adopted. That completes our agenda. As revised. That's right. And I think I'll thank everyone for your time and attention tonight. It's been great working with you, and we are adjourned.